Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to A to Z Running. Hi everyone, welcome to the A to Z Running podcast where we help runners thrive. I'm Andi.
And I am Zach.
This week on the A to Z Running podcast, we're doing something different because it's been quite a phenomenal week because many records have been dropping. There's so much happening in the world of running. And during these historic times, I think we should give it some due airtime, right?
Airtime.
Good
airtime.
It's not an eerie time. It's airtime.
I said ear time.
Oh, that's something even different. And we also wanted to come back to last week's topic because there's so much great discussion and interest in the topic. And so we wanted to dive into it further.
Before we talk about anything, though, you need to hear us talk about everything. And in order to do that, you go to AtoZrunning.com and look for the word follow so that you don't miss the great stuff. But of course, that's only one avenue for finding the great stuff. And so you also want to head to the podcast platforms. We're on Google, we're on Apple, we're on all those places, as well as YouTube, and subscribe, because then you don't have to go looking every time the great content needs to come to you.
Please and thank you. We appreciate all of you and your interaction. In fact, I kind of impulse bought these Team USA shirts. I bought one for myself and then one that I want to give away just for fun because the Olympic trials are coming up and I thought it'd be fun to give away this Team USA shirt, size small. Anyway, head over to Instagram. It closes on Wednesday. So it's a pretty fast one, but if you want to be part of that, hop on over to Instagram. We love to connect with you. And we've had great comments there too about our most recent episode about fuel storage and the differences between men and women, fasted state running concerns, long run efforts and fueling. And then there was a lot of references and recommendations for Stacy Sims' book, Roar. So Zach read the book.
Like a tiger.
Like a tiger.
Roar. So, yes. Okay. Well, we did want to address a couple of the points because there was a lot of great conversation, as Andi said. And this is one of the reasons when we encourage you to comment and ask your questions and express your insights and situations. This is one of the reasons why, is because it just simply makes the content better. So here's an example of how the content is about to get better because of your listener comments and reactions. So the first thing I want to try to do here is clarify some of the key points from the previous episode. If you did not listen to that episode, this might actually be a great introduction to it.
Yeah.
And then go and listen to it so you get the full substance. But the point here being a couple of key things, and then I did want to bring into the conversation Stacy Sims' book, Roar, because I hadn't read it prior to the previous conversation, and since so many people said, you have to read this, I thought, okay, I will read it, and then we'll bring that in. So, first, the thing we always discuss when we're talking about any kind of training considerations in any avenue related to the work of running, building fitness, and such, is to know the purpose of the thing you're trying to do. Like, what am I trying to accomplish? And then based off of that, now I know how to implement the thing to accomplish that. That applies to sleep. That applies to diet. That applies to hydration. And of course, training and all of those things. So if your goal is to maximize performance, my goal is to accomplish as best as I can in the sport, and specifically performance in long distance races and marathons, then, as we were discussing last week in terms of fuel storage and fuel burning, we need to be efficient and effective at burning fuels, specifically burning stored fuels and the various different types: carbohydrates, fats, glycogen, fats, and things like that. Mainly because our body is going to benefit much more from being able to burn its stored fuels than for us trying to ingest fuel sources while we're in the midst of the effort, which we still do.
Yeah.
Yes. But in terms of training, we want to make sure we are also training, not exclusively. None of this is exclusively. That's another thing that's always interesting. But make sure we're maximizing our body's ability to use stored fuels. And there's a lot of different ways we go about that, as we mentioned in the previous episode. So certainly go listen to that for more detail. The other dynamic that came up a number of different times is where the conversation of performance goals and weight loss diverge and converge. And the main thing here is that if you are trying to maximize weight loss and performance goals at the same time, it's very difficult to do both highly effectively because they're not always going to be parallel in terms of how you accomplish that goal. So that being the case,
but sometimes it is.
There are overlaps.
There are, yeah, definitely overlap. Mm-hmm.
And understanding where those overlaps occur is going to make a big difference here. I'm actually going to address the most important one.
Pete had said, like, talk to your doctor. Megan's like, she's a nutritionist. Talk to a nutritionist because everyone has specific needs.
Yeah, so I can cover some general principles here, but I can't tell you what to do because I don't know your situation immediately.
What
but
medications you might be on.
We do work directly with Pete and know his situation. So when he raised all these questions and comments, we were able to work with him in the midst of all of the nuance. And that's a key dynamic there. So what I'm about to say here is a generalization, as these things tend to be, which is the case that, general conditioning in terms of running training, aerobic conditioning is the kind of thing that can accomplish both performance goals and weight loss goals at the same time fairly well in both, largely because general conditioning is not race-specific types of preparation, and so it's something that you have a little bit more wiggle room in the kinds of things that you do. Now, if you're not familiar with what general conditioning means, I'll explain very briefly something in a moment, but that's a much larger conversation we're not going to try to get into right now. So when we talk about then long runs and energy systems, that's one of the key aspects in terms of this general conditioning period that raised a lot of questions, and I appreciated all of those questions. So how do we approach long runs? And there are a lot of different ways you can approach a long run in terms of what the workout is and what you actually do. The point I'm trying to make most of the time when I talk about long runs is that for all of us, regardless of whether you're a marathoner, long and easy is generally the best recommendation all the time. There are only rare instances where we would ever recommend an athlete do something other than easy for long runs. And when I say easy, it seems to be the case that there's some kind of confusion out there about what we mean by that, because when I look at like running calculators, they actually have a pace for long run. Like they'll say, here's what you should run for your long run. And that makes no sense to me because long run is not a pace or an effort. Long run is the duration of your run. So how fast you run that is not a specific recommendation just because it's a long run. Anyway, that a point aside, yes, easy was the point we were trying to iterate many times, simply because that's when we talk about the fuel storage and the fuel system that you're trying to use and manipulate. The long, easy effort is that depletion long run kind of dynamic that you hear people talking about. What we're essentially saying is that we want you to be able to run easy enough that your body can use fat storage fuels well without running into nourishment or fuel problems. Now, there's some nuance between men and women there. I'll get to that in just a moment. But the key thing here is that if we're talking about glycogen stores and fat stores, both of those are playing into this factor. The thing that we're not trying to do is fuel drain the run if the goal is a fuel storage efficiency thing. If I'm trying to train my fuel storage metabolism, metabolizing, then I need to do that long run easy without ingesting fuel during the run. But nuances apply, and one of the main ones came up when I read Stacy Sims' book Roar. And so, yes, differences between men and women, and I appreciated Sims was writing in a number of different ways. Essentially, men and women are different physiologically, which shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But she also was bringing up the point that women are themselves, Andy would probably be the better person to be saying this out loud right now, but women are themselves different physiologically depending on hormonal states, among a few other things.
Oh, yeah. So like different points in your cycle, for instance.
Not training cycle.
No, not
menstruation.
training cycle. Yeah, yeah. So if before, during, and after menstruation for different durations.
Okay. So that means that the nuances change in those things, and we understand that, we recognize that. None of what we were trying to talk about last week and none of what I'm trying to iterate right now is specific to these nuances. It's the general principles, and then you have to apply or implement them based off of your current context and its nuances. This is complex stuff.
It is.
This is why you need to hire us to coach. No, I'm kidding. Well, I'm not. I'm only somewhat kidding when I say that. But this is why we as individual athletes need to be able to either make the informed and intelligent decisions ourselves by doing all the reading and all the work, or, and the best case scenario is doing both of these, or finding people who can help us implement these things well.
Right.
And that's because they are so complicated. But if I can just very briefly then address, so especially in some of Sim's work as she was writing through these things, talking about how energy systems emphasize differently in men and women, which is a fascinating thing. Basically, they're kind of reversed of each other in a general sense. So women tend to burn fat more efficiently during exercise than men, and women tend to burn carbohydrates less readily during exercise, and then post-exercise or in the recovery period, women tend to burn carbohydrates more readily, and men tend to burn fat more readily. And so then you get this conversation of, yes, as Sims affirmed, it is apparently easier for men to burn fat than women, which is something I haven't really paid a lot of attention to most of the time. But what that means in terms of training in that instance is that it's actually easier for women to maximize their fat metabolism. It's also easier for women to overdo things in that instance, especially if they're not properly nourished.
Yes.
For that kind
so
of
under
effort.
fueling, and I think that was probably the reaction, from some people is that, there's a lot of under fueling that's going on, a lot of restrictive eating when we're distance runners, when we're endurance athletes, we need a lot of fuel in order to do these things. Yeah.
But the general principle, as we want to always make sure we clarify, is it is recommended that if you're trying to train energy system metabolizing of stored fuels, then that long run is the best opportunity. We don't recommend fasted state runs for these kinds of things. That wasn't the point we were trying to make previously either, but we don't recommend fasted state runs. Instead, we recommend using a kind of depletion long run instance for that. But that only ever is a good idea if your fuel storage is high. So you must be well nourished, well fueled. And in any instance, this is why we talk about the difference between performance and weight loss here, because in a weight loss scenario, you may be intentionally under fueling. And as the nutritionists like Megan tend to say, minimally. You're skimming off the top, right? But you may be intentionally under fueled in those kinds of situations. And if that is the case, then a depletion long run can in fact be a risky maneuver because you're not operating on full fuel stores. So when I say things like this, these are the general principles that I tend to apply when assuming the nuance in the context. Right. So yes, now there's so much more that we could say, and I don't want to just continue reiterating what I said previously last week either. Go back and listen to that, but remember the two most important things that establish the context for what we were talking about and what we continue to recommend with fuel storage and our fuel training is that first, we do recommend doing these long runs easy all the time, easy. And in doing that easy, don't take fuel when you're doing that at that point in training, which is best during the conditioning phase. That's not to suggest that's the only way to do
or that
fuel training.
Yeah. So, or there's not other considerations. There's many factors.
Many factors. And then our second point is you must, if performance is your goal, be attentive to eating well, fueling well, and balanced. Because if we're talking about all these things we just addressed, then you need carbohydrates in maximum supply, you need fats in decent supply, and you need proteins in decent supply.
For the recovery.
For all of it.
Before,
during, and after, all this kind of stuff. You need these things in your system, and you need them in your system regularly. So there's a lot of nuance to all of that. We know. And what we would love to do is if there are specific questions to a situation, like here's my concern about what I'm doing in my situation, ask away because we love to try to
not us though, nutritionists or your doctor.
No, I'm talking about the training.
Oh, the training. Yes, the training recommendations. Feel free to shoot us a message.
Andy loves to tell you that I am not a nutritionist, which is true.
It is true.
But I would love to help you implement your training goals in light of your situation. So while we want to share this next piece here is not directly related to fueling, however, it is related to achieving our performance goals. And if you recall, not long ago, Carl, one of our athletes, did in fact achieve a massive performance goal, a 20-minute marathon PR. But we also wanted him to be able to share with you why, in part, he felt that was possible. So here it is, insight from Carl into how to achieve a 20-minute marathon PR.
Hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about Tobacco Road Marathon and the experience I had during this training cycle. I know it sounds cliche, but one thing I did differently that I haven't really done in the past is I just stuck with the plan. If the race or the schedule said to run less that day or slower that day, I would run slower. There was even several times when I was out with friends and they were doing an 8-mile run, and mine was supposed to be 60 minutes, and I wasn't running the pace to keep it 60 minutes, get my 8 miles done in 60 minutes. So I just cut the race short. And then the second part really is just went into the race with a really strong strategy. Zach, I know you and I talked about spending that first 10 miles just running by feel. And once that 10 miles was done, to reevaluate and do some math in my head. So I did that and felt great the first 10 miles. And then as I was continuing on through, I remember at mile 19 and a half, I started thinking, man, this is tough. And then playing the mind games that I had with myself, instead of sticking with this is tough, I turned that around a little bit and said, this is tough, but so am I. And just pushed through it. The last half mile, a mile or so was tough. But I also knew that I was hitting my paces and hitting my time, and I didn't want to give up. So I finished strong, and I had so far probably the best race of my life. So thank you to A to Z. Thank you, Andi and Zach, and the support that you've given me through this. And I just look forward to the future.
Seriously impressive work, Carl.
Good job.
Absolutely. So any one of us would love a 20-minute marathon PR, no doubt. But what none of us love is the marathon dregs that follow that marathon
nice transition.
effort. Mm-hmm. And so that is why recovery is so important. And Roll Recovery has your back, or rather, they have your legs. And with all of their recovery products found at rollrecovery.com, you're sure to find something that can make a difference, like the customizable R8 multiple roller insert options. So you've got the super plush all the way to the super, what is this called? Pointed? Deep. Wow. And among other things, you can customize there on the R8. Now, we could sit here and tell you about why that's so great, but why not hear from Lewis from Roll Recovery to tell you exactly why the R8 achieves the goal. So, Lewis, you're telling us that we've got something special here, something different in terms of a recovery product, something that achieves the goal of recovery, deep tissue massage element, and that it's backed by research. Start us off on the R8 specifically then. What about it? What makes it work and do what it does well? Why the R8?
All right, let's get gritty with it. So I brought my own in here as well. This is the standard R8 that we have. This is like the original, just like white. We also carry it in black and red. Or you can customize your own, which is why you guys have more than just a black or a white roller. I have my own right here with a variation of inserts, and I customized the font on there as well. It says Thunder from Down Under, which is stupid, I know, but it was fun to make. So the R8 originally, we called it that because of the 8 nodes of contact. So there's these little 4. These are what originally, by the way, were the rollerblades. But these 8 nodes of contact are the actual parts that are meant to go much, much deeper than if this was just like a flat piece, right? You can see, and that if it was a flat piece, it would just be like anything else on the market, which is because so many products out there are just cylindrical and there's not much texture to them, and they're not designed to like penetrate actual deep tissue. So that's where this would come in. So on top of the 8 nodes, what separates it is it's actually got these springs loaded in here, and they're taut. So when you pull this out like this, I'll show you how to actually apply it to a muscle, but when you pull it out like that, it's going to snap back in. If you can gently apply that onto a muscle, then the pressure is there already. You don't have to apply any pressure. So it basically just takes away the work that you would otherwise have to put in when it comes to foam rolling.
Kicking off the world of running, we're starting close to home here in West Michigan. We had the Deemer Run 5K, a very fun local race put on by a local hero, an Olympian, Brian Deemer, 3-time Olympian, in fact, and bronze medalist at the Olympic Games in the 3K steeplechase. He puts on this amazing race in our community that really draws quite a few amazing runners. And I had the opportunity to run it just a couple seconds off my PR. So thanks, Coach. And we also got a chance to catch up with the women's winner, and that was Catherine Mwanzo. And she was able to tell us how much she loved their race. So congrats to Catherine, and let's hear from her.
It was very nice. I like the course. I like the place. It's very good. And I promise to come here back again.
Love those local runs. Now, as you've all been anticipating greatly, we have the NCAA Track and Field National Championships to tell you about. So taking place from Tuesday, June 8th through Saturday, the 12th in famous Eugene historic Hayward Field. Well, it's not historic anymore because they completely rebuilt the whole thing. But Hayward Field, Eugene, Oregon. And this is the same location where they'll be holding the Olympic trials in only a couple of weeks. So kind of like test driving it for a little bit here for a major championship event. And we have so many exciting things. So here's what we're going to try to do. We're basically going to try to lay out the individual winners of each of the key middle and distance events. But then we also have the results links and such that you can go check out yourself. And we'll try to give you just little tidbits of some things here and there that you'll find interesting.
Yeah, and we also are linking to how you can watch these races because the NCAA has them on YouTube.
At least at the moment.
At the moment,
Hopefully
yeah.
they stay there.
So let's start with a thing, Mo. I mean, what a great place to start with the collegiate record time in the 400-meter run of 49.57, breaking her own record.
Yeah, that's not too shabby.
It was crazy because I watched this race, and I'll obviously embed this too, but she like runs away from everyone. And when the camera finally ends on the finish line, there's no one else in the frame but her. And this is a 400-meter race.
So in a single lap, she makes everyone else look like pedestrians.
No. They all looked like they were really fast, but she just pulled away.
Because they are all really fast, just not fast enough for her.
To beat the best in collegiate history in the NCAA.
as the question persists and so it continues, what will she run at the Olympic trials? I'm very excited to know.
Yes, we're both very excited. So the men in the 400-meter run, it was also a very exciting race, and Randolph Ross ran a 43.85 to win the 400-meter run, and that's the third fastest time in collegiate history.
So I guess that's pretty quick, too.
And it's in his DNA. His father was an Olympian, world championship medalist. He's a coach, and he's the current director of track and field at Randolph School, North Carolina A&T, and his name is Dwayne Ross.
It was kind of funny in the interview afterward when he says, when my dad and I were talking about the race, when Coach and I were talking,
yeah, he did actually say that, yeah.
That's funny. Mm-hmm. All right, so in the 800 meters, let's go ahead and start the rundown now. For the men, USC's Isaiah Jewett won the 800 with a time of 1:44.68. Very well executed race. As a matter of fact, I will say, after watching the race, basically it struck me that he, of everyone else in the race, probably had to do the least amount of work and won the race. And what I mean by that is he ran the shortest distance. So he ran basically in lane one almost the entire time, but he was not leading the whole race. So he didn't have to do the work of setting the pace. He only had to pass one person on a straightaway, which is the easiest place to pass. And then he stayed there the rest of the run and didn't really have to change much. He just powered strong the whole time and just stayed ahead of everyone.
It was gutsy though, because in the end you could see like, he might tie up, but he had already gained so much of a lead, and he was still cranking. He wasn't completely getting jello legs or anything, but you could tell like if this was any longer of a distance, he'd be in trouble.
It was just a good example, though, of when you can execute that well,
perfectly,
you're setting yourself up for an advantage. It doesn't mean you're going to win the race, but he held the execution through the entire race, and as a consequence, definitely won it.
Yeah, and Zach actually went past one of my notes, and I have to mention it, Zach. It's a collegiate record. So the 4x400 meter.
The reason I went past it is because I don't really pay much attention to relays and 400 meter runs.
It's the most
true.
it can be the most exciting.
Yes, of course. When you're sitting there at the track meet after
well,
hours and hours and hours,
Athingmu
it's nice
anchored Texas A&M's win of the 4x400 meter run, and it was a collegiate record time of 3:22. We have to talk about these records, Zachary.
Well, if everything except the relays and the 400 meters and shorter. So for the women's 800, Michaela Meyer ran 2 flat to win the race. And that was of Virginia is where she attends. And apparently this was her 6th personal best time, according to Let's Run, in this season alone in the 800, which means she just basically has continued running faster and faster and faster until, you get to the most important race of the year, the championships, and
that's
then won
ideal.
it.
That's very ideal. And speaking of race strategies, I thought it was really interesting because what was different about these two was that Isaiah, he took the strategy of, really trying to get a lead early, and the opposite was done of Michaela, which I think maybe is more typical, where she did the perfect swing on the last corner and then won in that last straightaway. So all of these great race strategies to pick apart.
So one of the things we like the most about championship races is that you see strategy happening much more. So the mid-season races, especially the ones that are about like qualifying times and such, they've got pacers or rabbits. The race is set up intentionally to just be like everyone run as fast as you can, and we're not really concerned about who wins the race. Obviously they are, but only as a minor attribute. So the main focus is just getting the fast time. But then you get to the championship, and the only thing that matters is winning the race, and things happen differently, and it's really exciting to watch. So speaking of exciting championship races, the 1,500 meter was a highly anticipated run. You heard us talking about it because Cole Hocker of Oregon won that double indoors, the mile 3,000 double, and in running outdoors qualified for both the 1,500 and 5,000. The first of the two to happen was the 1,500, and Hocker did not disappoint. From Oregon, winning another national title, his 3rd on the year.
Freshman, by
as
the way.
a freshman in 3:35. He actually just missed the Olympic standard, which is a time he has not run yet this year. But he did run a new NCAA title over the collegiate record holder, Yared Nuguse of Notre Dame.
Wow.
So that's something.
And that race is on YouTube as well. So like I said, we'll be letting you know how you can watch them, because these are just really fun races to watch, as we've been mentioning. And a Camp 1 and a classic race strategy of passing on the final curve, like we were mentioning earlier, running away with the championship title in 4:08, which is a personal best time for Camp.
So I did also then want to note, when we're talking strategy, it's always interesting to reflect on some of these things, because in that men's 1,500, so when you have a situation like a head-to-head or a head-to-head-to-head in the final straightaway, basically you see a few different kinds of things play out. And Yared Nuguse and Cole Hocker were going head-to-head down the straightaway. Now, Nuguse had the lead coming into it, but Hocker was off his shoulder on the curve, which is, like Andy keeps saying, where you want to be. And so you're thinking about it like this. We're taking a slight left turn off the curve, and Ngusi's looking up at the Jumbotron, which is showing him who's behind him. Yeah. So it used to be that you had to look over your shoulder to see who's there, but now they've got the big camera, and the screen is in the home straightaway intentionally so that the athletes can see more, which I don't know how I feel about this, but they do it in all the big races now. And so he's looking at the Jumbotron as Cole Hocker's passing him. So in that moment of glancing up here, he's not able to see that Hocker's already going by him. So by the time he notices in the Jumbotron, Hocker's already right there. Well, so here's the problem. Now, you have a couple choices to make as Nuguse here. If you didn't take that glance at the moment and you started to notice the athlete on your shoulder, the first thing that you'll notice these championship runners tending to do is they start drifting outward, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to cut the line that the passing opponent has toward the finish. And so they slowly drift outward, and they'll push them. You'll see this sometimes. They'll keep drifting outward until they're in lane like 5, 6, even 7 sometimes. It happens.
I've never
crazy.
seen it that far,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I have seen this
I'll
strategy
go find a race
before.
sometime and show it.
Okay, that'd be great.
But so that's a strategy when you're the one in the lead to try to cut the line of something. Now that runs many risks. One of them being if someone else is coming in and they now have an inside track.
That's happened. You've seen that happen. Yeah.
Yep.
And you wonder, like, why did they leave that lane 1 open? Well, it's for this reason.
It's because they're trying to cut off the other guy.
Yep.
Yeah. So you get distracted by just one thing and you lose touch of the whole race. Obviously, the best strategy there is to just run faster than everyone else. But clearly, Neguse was struggling. He was feeling the burn, and Hocker was really trying to get the edge. Well, here's what happened instead. So Neguse didn't get the moment of anticipation he needed to start moving a little bit. And instead, Hocker comes around his shoulder and does the exact opposite thing, which is even a better scenario if you can put yourself in it, where he's now just a half a step ahead and he starts drifting inward. But Neguse has nowhere to go because it's the rail. And so what happens is, and you'll see this, a really savvy racer will do this, which clearly Hocker knew what he was doing because it was on purpose for sure. But he drifts all the way inward, slowly forcing Neguse to have to slow. Otherwise, he's just going to run into Cole Hocker. And
I don't love that. No.
And eventually, Hocker takes the full lane, and Neguse's behind him. Now, it might have just simply been because he was running faster. He had greater acceleration coming into that straightaway. But at the same time, if perchance Hocker started to struggle in the last like 50 meters or something, he still would have won that race because Neguse would have had to go all the way around him.
Yeah, I understand these race strategies, but I don't know. I feel like the running is like the gentleman's sport. I don't know about cutting people off and.
These are the jerk moves that, the things that are legal that you gotta have in your tool belt when you're in championship
what do you do if you're the inside guy and someone starts leaning in on you?
You start drifting out.
You put your arm out?
Oh, no. Then you get disqualified.
Oh, my goodness.
That's an obstruction. So you're put in a real tight spot.
Yeah.
Literally
a tighter spot.
So in the 3,000 meter steeplechase, we got so much to cover, and we're just going to keep talking. So much to cover. This is great. The men's steeplechase, Middle Tennessee State's Keegan Kamadi won, and this is significant because apparently it's the first victory in an NCAA title for Middle Tennessee State since 2003 or 13. Now I don't remember which year.
You should have written it in the notes.
I should have written it. But it was a fair many years. And so that being the case, it was a great run, very tactical race, and he just blazed the final lap, which in a steeplechase, while you're jumping barriers, is hard to do, especially because you're generally that much tired. Speaking of being tired at the end of the steeplechase, second place coming into the final straight where you have one final barrier to jump, Ryan Smeaton from Oklahoma State was closing hard on Kamadi, but hit the final barrier, clipped it with his foot, and fell.
Ouch.
And ended up finishing third still, which is actually quite impressive because he jumped up real fast and still he only lost 2 seconds.
Wow.
And he still finished 2 seconds behind.
It's a tight race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's tough.
Mala Norris of the Air Force won for the women, and that was also a pretty amazing race to watch because she was like in lane 3 the whole time. And I guess like this was like a big race for her. Obviously she got a PR and won this championship race, but she did it in a very difficult way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And she ran like you should see her finish. It is amazing. And she only won by 0.05 seconds. 0.05
of a second.
Yeah.
That's something. So part of why it was such a significant run is because she only ran the steeplechase for the first time 2 months before.
Well, that might be the reason she was taking the outermost, or like she was trying to find the outermost
really
position
careful.
because she didn't want to get tangled up on these barriers.
Yep. And that's where like novice steeplechasers, you tend to see a lack of confidence. And so they want more space for the jumping. But the more comfortable steeplechasers run into problems sometimes because they're more comfortable being closer together with people. They're not quite as worried about the barriers, and so they also risk making mistakes more easily because when you start to get tired, it doesn't matter how many times you've run a steeplechase, those barriers get taller in the last lap.
Sure thing. Feels like it.
In the 5,000 meters, then, on the men's side, and once again, an Oregon show, this time, Cooper Tier, who was supposed to win that indoor 3,000 meters, except Cole Hocker surprised everyone and took that victory. Well, Cooper Teare got his victory.
Yes, he did.
In the 5,000, running 13:12. Substantial meet record, more than 6 seconds off the previous meet record. One of the best performances in NCAA history, and doing so in just a blazing run from line to line, a fast race, and then closing incredibly hard. It was just great to watch.
Mm-hmm. And his teammate Cole Hocker was fourth.
So
like it's worth
not
noting.
Bad. Yep, not bad. You win the 1,500, come back for fourth in the 5,000. That's good.
Ellie Hens, she won for the women in 15:28.
So not quite as quick of a race overall. The men's race was like fast from the gun. The women's race was a little bit more tactical, as they like to say. Yeah. And then for the 10,000 women.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you want me to go?
Well, you've been saying all the other women's ones.
Oregon's Camilla Cardama Bays won the 10,000 meter title in front of her home crowd, and she beat over Mary Chucklingat.
Mercy Chalengat.
Oh, sorry.
Of Alabama, who was the race favorite.
Okay, yeah.
Excellent. So in the men's race, Patrick Deaver of Tulsa also surprised, another kind of upset, winning in 27:41. Which is that's a decent time for a championship 10K. Usually those races are not incredibly fast times.
Well, that was really exciting. NCAA championship.
So much. We love championship races. So you got to go watch. Andy mentioned we've got the race videos linked for most of these, and you want to watch them because it just makes it that much more exciting. Also, you're going to see a lot of these same people at the Olympic trials in a couple of weeks. The top NCAA athletes tend to be the types that run as well at the world stage.
A thing, Mo.
Oh, yeah.
Be watching that lady.
Good.
She's speedy.
Stuff. Yeah, so speaking of fast international running, we've got a couple of meets here that we got to share that just incredible stuff. But the first one is from Thursday, June 10th, in Florence, Italy. This was a Diamond League meet, which is usually held in Rome. This is the Rome Diamond League. The Diamond League meets are named by the city they're held in. But clearly, this was not held in Rome because it was in Florence. That's a temporary thing, probably COVID-related. We didn't really need to look too much into it, but it was fast.
So fast.
So I want to start with the men's 5,000 meter because I'm just so amazed by what happened. Okay, so you heard us talk about Jakob Ingebrigtsen many times.
Yes, it's like Zach's younger brother or something.
It has nothing to do with that, but
He
I
has
do
such a
like to say
fondness.
his name. So he has two brothers who are also world-class athletes.
Actual brothers.
Which makes it just that much more interesting. He's the youngest of the three, in fact. Now, you've heard us mention him so many times because he has been setting Norwegian records now in the last almost 18 months. At just about everything, like literally just about everything on the roads and indoor and outdoor track, 1,500 up through 5K. Well, this was a 5,000 meter, and boy, oh boy, did he show the world that he is the guy to beat right now. Anytime he toes the line somewhere, it's like he's the guy to beat.
He's got the leading world time now, right?
Yes. So I haven't really spilled the details here because I'm building anticipation. He won the Diamond League meet, which is always an impressive thing. I'll tell you who he beat in a moment. In a Norwegian national record time, which was also a European record, 21-year-old European record, 12:48. Woo! Yes.
And that was his first time breaking 13 minutes.
And a massive PR to boot.
Smash.
Yeah, 12th all time in the history of the world. And doing so in that race over many of the world's best, including world record holder Joshua Cheptegei of Uganda. So, yes, Jakob Ingebrigtsen just stuck it to a world record holder amongst many other world-class athletes. And
with such composure, Zach.
Just looked great.
His
Just looked so good.
composure exceeds his age, and I think that's why even as a 20-year-old he races so well at these really, high pressure, high stakes, lots of competition, because he's got this amazing composure.
He is comfortable being amazing, which is not true of everyone in the sport. He's also comfortable in a race making really important decisions. So this race in particular was a fascinating one. You definitely need to watch it. We found it and we've linked to it. So you want to go watch it.
So hopefully that
one.
will still be there by the time you
Exciting.
click on it too.
One of the reasons why you want to watch it is because he had to make a very important decision early in the race, midway through the race, where the leader pack kind of broke away almost accidentally because someone within the pack slowed fairly quickly. And so what happens is you've got all these runners running in single file, and a guy kind of in the middle of the single file suddenly starts slowing down because he's just fading hard. And the rest of the guys behind him, if they don't react instantly, and then they need to go around him, obviously, there's immediately a gap.
Yep.
And it forms quickly, and it tends to form bigger because you have to now rebuild momentum. So that happened. Not just to Jakob Ingebrigtsen, but the runners around him all got slowed, and then they had to make up this gap. And Ingebrigtsen did exactly what you should do in that situation, which is he did not just charge right up and make it up right away. Instead, he knew, I'm feeling good, I'm in a great rhythm, we're already running super fast. So instead, he just eased his way toward those leaders, and to his credit, caught back up with them, and then just hung out there long enough to muster some more momentum and smashed them on the final lap. It was so good. It was so good. Okay.
Well done.
A couple of others in the race, and some fast times all around there, by the way. But Hagos Gebruet of Ethiopia, who's a three-time world and Olympic gold medalist, he was in that run. Didn't beat Ingebrigtsen.
Wow.
Mukhtar Idris, also of Ethiopia, was the 2019 world champion in the 5,000 meter. Couldn't hang. Canada's Mohamed, who ran 12:47 last summer, he was in there.
Yeah, that was the Bowerman
Couldn't
track
beat
thing,
Ingebrigtsen.
wasn't it?
Yep,
Yep,
he's a
okay.
Bowerman Track Club guy. And then Justin Knight, also of Canada, also a 12-something 5K runner. Those guys ran fast times in this race, but it was Ingebrigtsen's show. And then I mentioned Joshua Cheptegei was in there too. He ended up 6th place in the race. Did not look like a gold medalist type of performance for him. So he's got a little bit of work to do because...
Or he just had a day.
Well, maybe. He hasn't looked it, though, yet this spring. So we'll see.
Yeah, the Olympics are still a couple months.
Oh, by the way, in 4th place was Spain's Mohamed Katir for a new Spanish national record
We love
in
national
a time
records.
of 12:50.
Wow.
Excellent.
4th place in that field.
All right, Andy, tell us about the 1500.
All right, Sifan Hassan can't quit. She is just taking the world by fire, even though she missed that world record. So she got the world record.
We actually haven't updated you yet on the fact because it's later on in our tableau.
We'll let you know in a minute, but she no longer holds that record. But she was
didn't
back.
stand long.
I know, but she was back showing her speed now in the 1500, and she won in 3:53 for a new world lead and meet record.
That's excellent.
And Faith Kipyegon, you might remember her from this winter. We were talking about her quite a bit, and then the summer too, because she was trying to hit that 1,000-meter record. Well, guess what, guys? She got the Kenyan national record now, 3:53 for the 1,500. So she's got to be very pleased with that record.
That's fast.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Laura Muir finished 3rd in 3:55, which is very strong for her as well. You see her, around that 4-minute mark and under almost every time she races.
She's rock solid, and this one, she didn't quite hang with those two, but the pace was
hot.
strong
It
the
was a
whole
hot
time, and
pace.
she just kept it close. But she did say that the race gave her some confidence for the Summer Olympics. So I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe she felt like she had more to give, but just didn't lay it out there yet. We'll see.
We'll see. And all 3 of those were better than the previous world lead. So it was a fast
times,
race.
yeah.
Shaking things up. In 7th place, Elise van der Lest ran a new Belgian national record in 4:02.
All right, more national records. So how many national records so far? 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that we've already listed. So a lot of good things going on here. That was all in one single meet. Now, by the way, there were world-leading performances in a handful of events in this one meet. I mentioned the men's 5,000. Andy mentioned the women's 1,500. Also in the men's 3,000 steeplechase, Soufiane El Bakali of Morocco set a new world-leading steeplechase time in 8:08.
Wow. Now let's bring it back to the U.S. to Central Park in New York City for the mini 10K. A little about the event.
It's a very small 10K.
But with big names. I don't know why they call it mini. That would actually be really good history for me to find out.
Mini Cooper.
Or maybe it's because it's in Central Park and, it's kind of like a mini loop.
I'm guessing it's sponsored by the car company Mini. Otherwise, it makes no sense to call an event Mini.
Well, I don't know. About the event, though, beyond that, I don't have that question answered. But the mini 10K began in 1972 as the first women's only road race. And then it was called Crazy Legs Mini Marathon. Crazy Legs.
Oh, that's why it's called Mini, because it's part of a marathon. Okay, I get it now.
Ah, okay, yeah. Sarah Hall won her second consecutive title there in 31:33, and she said that gave her confidence going into the trials. And it's the fastest time by an American in 49 years. So, the 49-year event history.
All right.
And the runner-up, very interesting, is Olympian Bernard Lagat's sister, Vola Cheptu, and she ran 31:39.
And she is Kenyan, by the way. Bernard Lagat is American, but his sister is still Kenyan.
Yeah, so I thought that was a fun fact.
Very interesting stuff. So we like road races because that's what we tend to do the most. But there's more news on the track. So on this now, we're going back a couple more days.
This is exciting. Tuesday. Hang with us. If you're like, oh, this is so much running stuff, but this is probably the most exciting stuff you'll hear.
We saved the best for last because it happened first. And that makes sense. So on Tuesday of last week, which was when we released our previous episode, which means we had recorded it before this happened, in the Netherlands, in Hengelo, on the exact same track that Sifan Hassan broke the world record 10,000 meters on Sunday. 2 days later, Letesenbet Gede of Ethiopia re-broke the just set 10,000 meter world record.
Which, remember,
by another 5 seconds.
So remember, that was a 14-second record to the previous record. So it was like, whoa, this is like a huge gap in this world record. Like, she really smashed it. And then to have it bested 2 days later is like mind-blowing.
So this event was the Ethiopian Olympic trials, the Olympic team trials. And for the distance stuff, Ethiopia does not necessarily send athletes in every event across track and field, but they are excellent in distance events, as you know. So this trials event was an 800 through 10,000 meter, including the steeplechase, and was held in the Netherlands. Now, it was held in the Netherlands because predominantly Ethiopia is mountainous, and the capital city is even at like 6,000 or 7,000 feet of altitude. And so as a consequence, if they hold the championships, which they often do hold them there, times are a little bit slower because it's at very high elevation. So they did this on purpose so that the athletes could have an opportunity to not just compete in the championship, but also run fast times. So for those who didn't already have a world standard, an Olympic standard, this was the opportunity to do that. And it did not disappoint. Many were running Olympic standards. It was an incredible thing. So all of that to be said, at the Ethiopian Olympic team trials, Letesenbet Gede ran a new world record 10K, essentially alone. She did have someone with her almost through halfway through 5K, but that's mostly because she intentionally ran the first 5K a fair bit slower than the record pace. And then the second 5K threw down. So her first 5K was 14:42. That's fast, world class. But her second 5K was 14:18.
Which is what, world lead?
That's like the 7th or 8th fastest all time for the 5K.
Yeah. Is that a world lead time? Do we know?
It would have been, but the world lead was actually bested by other Ethiopians in this meet. So
what?
Yeah. So
what a negative split.
What a negative split. And she did it on purpose. The lights, the pacing lights that go around the track now, wave light technology, were actually set to accelerate as the race went on. So they intentionally set it up to be a negative split world record attempt.
Wow.
Brutal. Okay, so that's incredible. We could just continue talking about that. And in fact, we do have a little bit more to say, simply because the question gets raised. So the two of them did this within 2 days of each other. And you could say, wouldn't they know, like, we're both in world record shape? And, well, yes, they would know because they have the same agent. So they knew, both of them knew that the other one was going to be attempting the world record on these meets. Now, then it gets more interesting because, well, if they have the same agent, why didn't they like coordinate some of this or something? This is clever. First of all, if they both break the world record on 2 separate occasions, which they did, they both get the world record bonus payout in their contracts. So this agent is savvy, thinking like, I'm going to help you make some money here, and I'm going to help you a lot by having you run separately, so you're both going to make money. Now, I think the agent also gets a commission.
That's how it works.
On record bonuses. I'm just guessing. I don't know because agent contracts are beyond me. But if so, that was a smart move for the agent, self-serving as well.
I didn't know that. How did you find this out?
So digging
Okay.
and digging.
Wow.
So anyway,
That's
that makes sense. And I would have guessed already. I would have guessed that part of the reason why they did that, knowing obviously that both of them, they did it in the same location, meaning they were both there in the city together at the same time. Not necessarily that they were like hanging out or something. I don't even know if they know each other directly, but
For they know of each other.
they know of each other. So yes, that makes sense. They wanted the bonus payouts. The best way to do it in that instance is to do it in 2 separate events. If you think that both have a good chance at doing it and don't need each other in the race, clearly they didn't. But the other thing is, so they're going to face off, at the Olympics.
Right.
We're going to see that. I mean, there's almost no doubt that both of them will be running the 10,000 at the Olympics. And so as a consequence, there's a little bit of like, hold off, wait. Let's not have them race each other yet, even though they could, and even though they could be both running world record performances in the same race, which would be so exciting. However, let's give them the bonus payouts separately so that each get it, and let's save the big race for the Olympics. It's all very exciting. So
Maybe
we're
you
going to
should
see
be an
that.
agent, the mind of an agent going
Now, all of that said, the reflection then is who, if it comes down to the 2 of them in the race, who's the favorite? Like, who's the likeliest to win that battle? Letesenbet Gidey has the world record in both the 5,000 and the 10,000.
Wow.
She's the first woman to hold both of those records since 1993. So she's got something special that others don't. However, Sifan Hassan won in 2019 both the 1,500 and the 10,000. And she's like only
Range.
the first or second woman to ever do that.
That is a range.
And we just saw, so Sifan Hassan ran that 1,500 we were talking about, 3:53, right? She ran that, which is very fast, much faster than Gidey's best 1,500. And she did it 4 days after running the world record, 10,000. So, like, that was basically like, look at me kind of move by Hassan. So, yeah, I am very excited to see the Summer Olympics and the women's races.
Very exciting.
Okay, so we just spoke a lot longer than we needed to about that, but it's because it's exciting. And now in the 5,000 at the Ethiopian trials, there was more excitement going on there. We mentioned already the world lead time went down. It didn't just go down. Previous to this event, the world lead was like 14:30 something. And then Gudaf Tsegay ran in the Ethiopian trials. And by the way, she's the world record holder in the 1,500 indoors. So you already know, like, she's got good stuff going on right now. She won in 14:13, the 5th fastest all-time 5,000 meter. But get this, so obviously a new world lead, but get this, 2nd and 3rd place were also right with her. This was not a solo effort. All 3 line to line battling it out. And then 1 second behind Tsegay was Edgayehu Taye in 14:14, and then Senberi Teferi in 14:15, rounding out the top 3, and also the 6th and 7th all-time ever. So 3 women running under 14:20 in a single race.
Wow.
Never happened before. 3 of them in the top 7 all-time, all from the same country, all on the same day. Whoa.
I wonder if they have like eyes on sweeping at the Olympics.
I mean, it's a real threat. It's a very real threat. They could go 1, 2, 3 in the Olympics, which would just be crazy. It wouldn't be the first time something like that's happened. But so, Andy, I'm not going to make you say this name for the 800 meter in the women, but we do have a new national record for Ethiopia in the 800 as well, and this is Workwuha Getachew, and she ran 1:56.67 for an Ethiopian national record and a new world leading time.
Are you like just so excited from hearing all of these national records and crazy fast performances?
What was that? Our sixth record, national or world or area?
I read an article where someone was like, are we getting fatigue from these
yeah.
world best times? I'm not. I'm
No.
certainly like geeked upon it. I think that this is really exciting. You know, I don't know. I feel like we all need this kind of excitement after not seeing as many races last year. I think people
It's
are
good
ready
stuff.
to go, rip
Yeah.
roaring ready.
It's good stuff. And sure, there's a comment here about like the changes in the technology and some other things that are making people run faster. And obviously, the shoes are playing some part in this. So we've talked about the road shoes, right? The super shoes with the carbon and all of that. Well, the track shoes, Nike made a super spike, just like their super shoe. It's just slightly different engineering because you can't have that huge, thick shoe on the track. There's a limit. The World Athletics organization said 29 millimeters, 27 millimeters. I can't remember. But the Nike super shoe on the road is like 40 millimeters thick. So obviously it's got to be a little different. But they still made a super track spike as well. They've got that wave light technology so the runners can follow the pacing lights on the track. Everyone talks about those kinds of things. Sure, it's playing some factor in this, but all it's doing is it's basically just creating a little upset, an uptick in the kind of the general flood. And then we're going to, maybe we'll see a bunch of new records for a bit. And then it's going to just kind of level itself back out. And we're going to see, these same athletes chipping away at these incredible performances. So I don't mind seeing it.
No.
It's good stuff. One other general comment about, and I say one, but it's a few things, about the Ethiopian trials. So many great performances, so many great things. But one of the interesting factors here is that Ethiopia has said their athletes will not be allowed to double in the Olympics. They have to choose one event and only compete in one, which actually does make sense, by the way, because Ethiopia's distance runners are so competitive at the world stage that you have 3, 4, 5 athletes in any event capable of medaling. And as a consequence, if you have athletes doubling and they're maybe a little bit more fatigued and someone else who could have been fresh could have medaled, like that's a risk that they would take if they let athletes double. So it's not the first time a country has said, we're going to try to limit that a bit so that we have a best chance for things like medals. However, the point being, they've also said at the same time that they're not going to make any decisions final based off the trials, but they'll, maybe per chance adjust things. So I'm not going to, we'll wait and see. Until the teams are officially announced, we'll wait and see. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting stuff.
So what else do you need to know before we wrap up this incredible week in the world of running? I think just mainly that these are the exciting times. And so through the month of June, we're going to continue to see just incredible and lots of things going on. And then we'll get a little bit of a kind of a break in July while everyone basically hunkers down for a final few weeks of gearing up for the Olympic Games. You don't see a lot of intense racing during that period, a little bit, but not much. And so as a result, everyone's doing their fast stuff right now because this is when they're hitting the world time. This is when they need to make sure that they've run the fast times so that they can actually compete in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And so, as noted, a lot of new world leads, a lot of new very fast things. The men's 800 meter had a new world lead in Nice, France. Oliver Dustin of Great Britain ran 1:43.
Wow,
which is super fast. But then across the top 20 boards, we had just all of them almost were completely rewritten. I think there were only 2 events. It was the women's 800 and the women's steeplechase that had fewer than 7 new top 20 world performances. And then of the rest of the events, there were several that had 10 or more. The women's 1500 had 14 new entries to the top 20 list in this week alone. So buckle up.
Buckle up. This is going to be a fun season of racing, a fun Olympics to follow. Some of the best in the world, many of the best in the world are competing in our times. And so that's why we're so excited to do World of Running segments for you, because we are living in a time where there's world records being broken and we can celebrate as part of the running community these great achievements that are being done. So on a less positive note, Shelby Houlihan was banned for 4 years, meaning our American favorite for the 5K, the American record holder in the 5K, will not be representing Team USA in Tokyo because of this ban. Now, she was banned because she had failed one of the drug tests. There was an anabolic steroid called nandrolone. And the tragic thing about this is that as I've been reading and, really kind of trying to explore what this is, it really doesn't seem like she did this on purpose. And also the level was at the bare minimum, meaning she wouldn't have been getting a very high advantage from this if she were to have intentionally ingested it.
So Andy has in fact done a lot of reading on this, in part because if we're going to bring this up, we want to be confident in our reaction as well. And what we see here is a clear example of this organization not achieving its purpose. Its purpose is to catch the people who are cheating. And this organization, I'm talking about the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency. They're supposed to catch the people who are cheating to try to gain an advantage in the sport so that we keep the sport honest. And from all indications, even if Shelby Houlihan was cheating knowingly, she definitely wasn't doing a good job of it because the amount of substance in her system was so small it wasn't going to give her any advantage. Yeah. So they're going to ban her for 4 years for basically not giving herself an advantage, but it was just more than what they liked to see. So
the story is that she had tested positive. She didn't know what it was either, so she investigated it, found out that you can get it from pork, and she had eaten at a food truck the previous day and had this like big burrito, I guess, which we all love as runners. I hear taco is a thing. We love it almost as much as coffee. So anyway, she really, like, this was devastating, obviously super devastating. So she took a polygraph test, submitted hair samples, and even though those things came back clean, her appeal was not accepted. And the WADA agreed that the test proved that there's no buildup of this substance in her body.
So, World Anti-Doping Agency says, this doesn't look fishy to us. U.S. Anti-Doping
No,
Agency.
it was them that. No, it was the World Anti-Doping Agency was the one saying we're still not going to accept it. Yeah.
So now here's what I have to say in reaction to all of these things, which is simply this: there is clearly no effort to prove malicious endeavor here. So what they do is they look at that and they say, well, this test said, and so. And this is not a judicial proceeding. There's no due process dynamics going on here, and there never is with these things. We understand that. However, maybe there should be some element of like, can we prove that you were trying to cheat here? Because if we can't, and you had a teeny tiny bit of something in your system, that you're ruining potentially someone's life.
Yeah.
And you're doing it why? Because you think there was some. So the volume here matters, because what basically they're saying is there's an amount that is considered to be about natural to just have in your system because your body produces this steroid naturally. And she had a minuscule amount over the natural amount. And we understand humanity, right? Like people have kind of like normal variations in small degrees of fluctuation, which is exactly what this is. I don't buy it.
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
Well, others in my research that were caught had 100 times to 1,000 times the limit, where she had the bare minimum.
Yeah.
So
if
that's
you're
what
trying
makes
to
me
cheat,
think, like,
you're really bad at it, Shelby Houlihan.
And it's very easy to detect. That was the other thing they were saying. It's like it's super easy to detect. And this article that I read was actually from a long time, like it was from early 2000s.
So it was easy to detect 20 years ago. Imagine now.
Well, and what I'm saying is this was not trying to clear Shelby Houlihan or anyone for that matter. It was just it was in Sport Law magazine. Mm-hmm. So I was just trying to like lay out what this is and why athletes are testing positive for it. So we don't claim to know the answers on this. We don't know. Maybe there's some sort of maybe there is something going on. We don't know, but the evidence that we're seeing does not point to Shelby using nandrolone as a performance enhancing substance. And she was the one who actually, first notified me of the situation, like not personally, but she posted it publicly and she came out in front of it. And I thought that was cool too. And she's just saying, I love this sport. Like this is my dream. And I wanted to compete clean, and that she told us like she hasn't taken any performance enhancing substances. So I mean, I'm willing to believe her based on this evidence.
So here's the thing: regardless of whether or not she is telling the truth, this organization is implementing what appears to be a shoddy decision, and these organizations are somewhat known for these shoddy decisions, things like banning athletes for missing too many drug tests when, they don't always show up at exactly the times when they're supposed to, but yet they still say it's your fault because you weren't there. I've seen and heard way too many things to suggest that these things are doing the great work that they're supposed to be doing.
But we do need clean sport. So there's the rub.
There's a better way, is my point.
Okay.
And I would love to see a little bit of that betterness.
Yeah, it's hard.
Speaking of seeing betterness, we've always got more content for you coming soon, so you definitely want to stay tuned next time for that. And if we can help you in any of your training endeavors, or if you just got comments, questions, and other things that you'd love to share with us, please reach out. Head to AtoZrunning.com, look for the word follow, or if it's a training need, look for the word coaching, and maybe we can help you there as well.
And don't forget the giveaway that ends tomorrow.